Welcome back to Legalese 123, where we are covering cases across America. Hello, we are back from break. We are in the Brendan Banfield trial, day 4. The prosecution is just finished up with their expert forensic blood spatter analysis. Wow, that's a lot to say. But in the meantime, after having our lunch break, I'm still eating, by the way. We have breaking news in the Aaron Spencer case. The defense is asking for the judge to recuse herself. Yep, I only got to read the filings just a little bit, and it is explosive. There's lots of allegations being made, and I clocked it. I said, if you see any of the earlier streams that I have, I asked, why didn't the judge recuse herself? We were led to believe that it was the same judge who had put the charges on Michael Fossler, who was the one that was SAing Spencer's daughter. Long story short, I was like, isn't that a conflict of interest? Lonoke is a small town. They only have 2 judges. Anyways, then they put a gag order. There's a lot of stuff going on in that case. I will cover it for you. But right now we're in the middle of this. I cannot cover 2 trials at the same time, but we will circle back to it. So just put a pin in that and follow me. So if you want to hear about the Aaron Spencer case and whether or not that will go to trial next week, it was on the fast track to go to trial. And I said, whoa, you better slow down. And they are claiming a lot of things. But we are back in the Banfield case. This is the Au Pair affair where Brendan Banfield is being accused of unaliving his wife, Christine, and the man that they catfished and lured to come into the house to have an event with Christine. Christine apparently didn't know anything. This was all set up by Banfield and his au pair that he was having an affair with. So let's get back to testimony. It is the defense's turn to question the forensic blood analyst. And again, we want to see some action. We want to see this attorney make a statement. Go after her. Go after what she's stating, because it is very ambiguous. Ambiguous. So, as the French say, allons-y. That means let's go in French. Okay. And we have some Zoom room, just a little bit. But we have just a little bit. I'm also going to be eating my lunch while this is going on. A lot going on. I'm all excited.
Yes.
Hold on.
Okay.
Is it on your laptop?
To the attorneys.
All I see is a white screen. Is it on your laptop?
Yes.
Hold on a minute.
Someone's
Switch it over.
breathing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to the witness and the attorneys?
The witness and the attorneys. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And this, for the record, what?
Someone is breathing really heavily in the microphone.
It's not in evidence yet? Okay.
It's not an evidence.
All right, thank you.
I can identify it, however.
Sure, okay.
Your Honor, if we could identify this as defense exhibit number 80.
80?
80.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go
I
off
think that's a
camera
little
because
out of
I'm
line,
eating and
but-
you
That's
don't want to
fine.
see me eat.
Good afternoon,
Maybe
Ms. Groff.
him who's
I'm John
huffing and
Carroll.
puffing.
I represent Mr. Banfield in this case.
Good
If there are any
afternoon.
questions
Oh.
that I ask you and you don't understand them, please ask for me to repeat them.
Sure.
Okay. Ma'am, can you see the first slide there at your station?
Excuse me?
Did you see something on the screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And have you seen that before?
Yes.
Okay. What were you, in terms of your ability to see that, was that in pictures?
This object or
Yes.
this one image or what's contained in the image?
This object and this image?
The object I saw in multiple images, including the body cams, videos, and I see it in this still image.
Okay. And you recognize that?
Yes.
Now, did you work with Detective Leach from the Fairfax County Police on this case?
I worked with him in the sense that I received, I believe, reports that he wrote documentation of what type of analysis was done or submitted various items for, and had a conversation about a particular testing that he did.
Okay. And the particular testing, was that the testing that we just talked about in your cross-examination with the, what you said was a linear drip stain on the pants of Joe Ryan?
No,
Which stain was it?
it had to do with some socks that that may or may not have been bloodstained, and that was the focus of our conversation.
Okay. And so how many conversations did you have with Detective Leach during this process?
I only remember one specific meeting that he was present where we had a one-on-one conversation about items in this case.
Okay.
Um,
And was that here in Fairfax that this meeting took
Yes.
place?
Yes,
And were you present for that here, or were you in a virtual situation?
and always present, physically present.
Okay. How long ago was that when you had your contact with Fairfax County PD?
When I talked to Detective Leach about this case,
Yes.
I don't remember the date, it's been some time ago.
Okay. Do you remember the date that you were previously here in Fairfax?
I remember what I was doing, I'd have to look up our calendar to see what date that was.
Did it coincide with another case that you were working for the Fairfax Commonwealth Attorney's Office?
No, it's not another case.
Okay.
We were here doing some training
Okay. And training here in Fairfax?
in this area. I think it was Alexandria, maybe. I remember the physical facility. I don't remember the name of the location, but it was in this area.
Now, going back to this image, were you aware of, and I'll show you the next image. Were you aware of Detective Leach asking for analysis for DNA on this juncture that's showing on the knife?
I was aware that some analysis was done. I did not talk to Detective Leach about specifically where or how the sample was collected. I think I may have looked at the results of the analysis,
Okay.
but I did not focus on this particular object.
And is it fair to say in your review of this that you looked at all of the results of the analysis that were produced in these cases, or in this case?
I don't know if I received copies of all the analysis that was done. Everything I received, I reviewed.
Okay. And in this situation, and Your Honor, I can.
Just want to mark it.
Well, what I was thinking I might do, Judge, is if we mark it A and then
80A?
80A
Okay, this can be 80A, that's
and
fine.
then 80B and going forward through.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm-
And I'll
okay.
identify it.
All right, so this is 80A, the one
Yes.
that's on the screen right now? Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, just to refresh your recollection, does that look like the analysis that you looked at?
Yes,
Best evidence. It's not the full document. The document's been admitted in evidence.
all right. Well, she needs to review the full document. We
Okay.
have it available. I think.
Ma'am, to your recollection, whose DNA was, without referring to that, whose DNA was identified on that portion of the knife?
Again, it wasn't part of my analysis. I don't recall exactly where it was.
Your Honor, I mean, this is the comments.
You got to be by a microphone.
Sorry, Your Honor, I'm going to look at the Commonwealth's exhibits because I think it's been introduced as one of the Commonwealth's exhibits. Karen, if we could pull up Commonwealth's Exhibit number 160.
I can't pull up anything.
Sorry,
I can't pull up anything.
I thought that was introduced into evidence.
Yeah, but we don't have their electronic files.
Yeah, I think it's on their.
This is not ours, this is the court's. If you want to use it, it's all here.
Ma'am, can I, Your Honor, if I may, I have the hard copy here. I'll just have her.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just switch it over to the lamp. Oh. You're just gonna use the hard copy on the lamp? Is that,
Big pardon?
are you just gonna give it to her or are you gonna
If I
use it on
could
the
just give
lamp?
it to her, that would be fine.
Okay, that's fine. 160, which I have is just lab sheet DNA blood.
It is lab sheet May 22, 2023.
Thank you.
Number 160.
All right, if you want to show her that, that's fine.
Ma'am, have you had enough to look at that? Does that refresh your recollection, ma'am?
Well, again, I don't know if this was one of the documents that I looked at. I'd have to look at my listing of the materials that I received. I recognize it as an analysis report, but I don't know if it's something I received
Okay.
or not.
In preparation for your testimony today, did you review the things that you had reviewed for testifying today?
I did look at my report. I didn't like memorize the whole list of
Okay.
what I did receive.
So you're not certain of the specifics of the lab analysis relating to the knife in this case?
I don't recall the specific.
I don't know what you're getting at, but just have her look at her report. Why is this so clunky? I mean, I understand sometimes they want them to rely just upon their memory and not to look at their report. But if you're trying to get something in, then just make it smooth. Can she refer to her notes? Can she look at her report? Or you as the attorney, what does she say in her report? Did she look at this? I'm frustrated.
Of the knife, and as I said, I did not focus on the knife as part of my analysis as far as identifying patterns and as a result of that, whose DNA profiles might or might not be present.
And would DNA profiles, whether they're present or whether they were even tested for, would those be important in some of the determinations that you've made today?
In terms of the knife itself,
In terms of any aspect of it?
in terms of everything taken together, those bloodstain patterns that I talked about, if a DNA profile was identified, then I noted that based on the relevant analysis reports that I had.
And if there were stains that weren't examined, would those be important as to informing your conclusions?
Judge objection is to form, I don't believe it's clear, examined by whom?
If you could rephrase the question.
Okay. There's, in the scenes that you've seen on the body cam, there are numerous stains, correct?
Yes,
And many of them have been tested, many of them haven't been tested, correct?
that's correct.
And in fact, you directed testing for some of them in your relationship with Detective Leach, correct?
I don't recall directing Detective Leach which stains to sample or to have tested.
Did you identify a sample that you required Detective Leach to get tested?
Not that I recall. My analysis was based on the documentation, not a personal examination of the physical objects.
Ma'am, did you have an opportunity to review what would be 80D? Do you see that picture?
I see the picture, yes.
Do you recognize that picture?
Yes,
Have you reviewed that as part of this case in your examination?
yes.
Okay. In this instance, this is the injury to, is this the injury to Joe Ryan in his left hand?
This is one injury to his left thumb.
Okay. And the contusion and the bruising, do you see that?
Yes, I see the contusions to the left thumb.
Okay. And in terms of your experience as a blood spatter analyst, blood spatter pattern analyst, is it fair to say there's a greater likelihood of injury to the person who's stabbing than someone who's, or to the person, there's greater likelihood of injury to the person who has the knife and is stabbing versus others involved in the scene?
I can't believe she didn't object to that.
I'm sorry, I'm not exactly clear on what the question is.
Is there, let me see if I can rephrase it. In your experience, is there a greater likelihood of a stabber having an injury as a result of that knife?
Stabber.
I can't really say greater likelihood.
Okay. Have you experienced that?
Not in something measured as a greater likelihood.
Okay. Have you experienced it in some other measure?
Well, that it's not uncommon for, in a stabbing situation, especially if there's no hilt on the knife,
Okay.
that multiple impacts can cause the weapon itself to become slippery because blood is a fluid and is wet. Their hand may slide and actually get cut.
I said that earlier.
And
Mr. Carroll, I just want to make sure, this is 80B, okay, 80B is
I'm
in
sorry,
Bravo.
yes, I was
Okay.
counting
I
ahead.
just want to get the record clean.
80B.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
She disrupted his flow. That was a good
Would
question,
you
good
agree
answer.
that, this is another view of that injury?
Yes,
That would
Appears to be.
ADC, identified as ADC.
Thank you.
Ma'am, do you see this, the slide that's before you?
no, sir.
Do you see the slide that's before you now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you recognize this, this particular picture from the body cams that you looked at?
This does appear to be a still portion of one of the body cams.
Okay, and this would be identified as ADD. Ma'am, looking at ADD, do you see my client there?
Well, I recognize that the person, there is a person kneeling on the floor, and in looking at all the videos of the first officers, that that person was later identified as Brendan Banfield.
Okay, and in that picture, can you see his hands?
I'm sorry, this particular image is very dark. difficult to see, but in the overall body cams, I did see his hands.
Okay, and are you saying that you don't see his hands in this picture?
I'm saying this picture is not really clear to show his hands. I see the area that I think is his hands, but the picture itself is not clear.
Okay, and do you see the blood on his hands?
I did see blood on his hands when I
Okay.
reviewed the body cams.
And in this picture, do you see blood on the backside of his hands?
I'm sorry, this picture is not clear enough to make a determination.
Okay, well, let's look at the blood stain down to his right. Do you see the portion that we've been talking about? And just if you need to look at where everything is situated in order to orient yourself, do you see the corner of the bed?
I can make out the area where the corner of the bed should be.
Okay, and can you make out the area where the saturated blood stains that you were talking about is?
I can see what appears to be. Again, the picture quality is very poor,
Okay,
but from reviewing all the body cams, I do know that there was saturation areas on the carpet.
okay, so just talking about this picture right here, this comes from when you reviewed the body cam, correct?
I reviewed all the body cam footage that was given to me for review.
And this footage is from the first body cam responder, isn't that correct?
Objection, Judge. I think it calls for speculation. She's indicated she has reviewed all of the body cam, but there has been no indication as to which body cam this came from.
If she can answer it.
The body cams of the first two officers going into the bedroom had the most information about location of persons and objects before being moved by the officers or being directed to be moved by the officers.
Okay, and in this picture, which would be 80D again, you can see the stained spot that you were talking about with the ladies and gentlemen of the jury earlier, correct?
Again, the quality of this picture is very poor, but I do know where there were saturations on the carpet based on all of my review of materials in this case.
Can you see the end of the bed?
I see what I think is the footboard of the bed.
Okay, can you see what's on the bed?
In this picture, you just see that it's a dark object. Based on the totality of the documentation, I know what that object is.
Okay, and what object is that?
It was a handgun.
Okay, and do you know which of the handguns that it was?
Yes,
Okay, which one?
based on all of the
helping
documentation
them
I
out.
had, this would be the gun that was Mr. Banfield's identified as his duty weapon.
The Glock 19M, would that be it?
That sounds right.
Okay, now, just looking at what we know about this, so you know where the gun is, even though you're saying it's a dark object, and that's, you know where the corner of the bed is, correct?
I know that the firearm, when the first officers arrived in the scene, it was laying on the southeast corner of the mattress.
Okay, and so you know where the blood stain is related to the southeast corner of the mattress, correct?
Blood stain was later identified on the sheet removed from the mattress.
Do you know, we're talking about the saturated blood stain that you spoke about quite often in your direct testimony, that's at the foot of the corner of the bed.
Yes, there were multiple saturation stains on the carpet.
Okay.
One was near the southeast corner of the bed on the carpet.
Okay, and were you also, did you also review the 911 tape of the call from Fairfax County, or to Fairfax County?
I did listen to 911 recording.
Okay, do you recall my client's statements about shooting an unknown person in the room?
I don't remember the specific verbiage. I remember that there was a reference to an injured person and a shooting.
Okay, and I'm not that worried about the detail, but what I'm am interested in is when he identified himself as shooting Joe Ryan, the police said, "Where are the guns now?" Do you recall that?
I don't specifically recall.
Okay. Do you recall them telling whomever is on the 911 tape, make sure the guns are visible?
Again, I don't remember the exact wording of the call.
Okay. And so you don't actually remember that from the 911 about the gun?
I don't remember the specific words that were said. I
Play
do
it for
remember
her.
specifically reviewing that there was reference to an injured person in a shooting, that was the basis for officers going to the scene.
Okay. And so would it be possible if that gun that's showing on the corner of the bed was put in the blood stain saturation that you've talked about today prior to making the 911
She can't
call?
make that determination.
Well, I don't know prior to the 911 call. Those are things that I can't know.
Okay.
I will say that the blood stain all along that complete side of the gun, the exposed side as you're looking at it, that it did have what appeared to be transfer. And certainly if the gun had been laid in a saturation or in a blood pool, then that would be a scenario that could not be excluded as how the blood stains came to be on that side of the gun.
Okay. And if that was left in the position that's in for purposes of the first responders, would that be something that could be tested to determine what the DNA was on, that gun itself?
If the gun itself, as it's laying there, someone could swab it and submit that swab for analysis.
Do you know if that ever happened?
That I don't know.
You've already had somebody
You
testify to
never
that.
received any records of an analysis of what was on the gun?
I don't recall getting analysis of any swabbing of the gun itself.
Okay. But
We
that
already
would
know
have been
they
the
did
most
that.
direct way to determine if there was blood or blood of a certain person or some other basis upon which to draw a conclusion if that was swabbed, correct?
To determine the DNA profile, that would be, I would think a preferable method would have been to swab it there as it's laying there. However, the gun was not left in that position. So,
Okay.
so there were some other things to consider as far as what would be tested and what would not be tested.
Oh, so when you're talking about not being left in this position that's showing here, you're talking about when the first responders moved it to the other side of the bed?
It was officers that moved it, and this gun was moved twice,
Okay.
based on the body cams. That's what I saw.
Okay, but the DNA analysis of this area, including those saturated, soaked blood stains, I think there were 2 of them. There are a number of other stains on the mattress. The only one that was tested was the one that's right underneath the gun, where on the bedding that was underneath the gun. Isn't that correct?
Okay. If I can take them one at a time. I did not see stains on the mattress. That simply wasn't included in images that I saw of the scene. The images that I saw, I could not identify blood stains on the mattress or on that sheet that was on the bed. There was more than 2 saturations on the carpet. Trying to remember what else you put in there.
Yeah, so I'll work with you on that. Let's go through it. The 2 big saturations on the carpet. You never saw any testing of those 2 big saturations, correct?
I'm sorry, I really don't recall. I have to go back to see
Okay.
if any of those were specifically tested. The one directly in front of the chest of drawers really be no reason to test that because in the context of the scene, we know the source.
Okay,
The one closest to the foot of the bed could be tested either by sampling the saturation of the carpet itself, or there was some clothing that was partially covered some saturation, but also was stained, and that could be tested for DNA. And then there's saturation over by the dog bed that's a distance away.
okay. And would it surprise you to know that none of those saturated positions were tested?
I wouldn't be surprised at that.
But that would give you information that would be helpful in arriving at whatever conclusion you're trying to arrive at, right?
That depends on the extent of the analysis. Like I said, the one stain pattern, there's really no reason to test because we could see in the context of the scene, particularly in the body cams, the source of that, because the source was laying in that area
Okay.
when officers arrived. The other could be tested, as I say, either directly from the carpet itself or objects on the carpet that were also stained.
Now, the firearm itself, that would be something that you would probably want to be tested, correct?
I would probably have preferred that it be tested directly from that, but also consider the fact that it was moved twice by officers in the scene. So before I would look at any results on that, I'd want to know more about the officers moving it to be sure that they didn't disrupt it. That's
And-
certainly a consideration and look at the pattern, if not the DNA.
And
That's
just so
good
you're
answer.
clear, you're talking about it being moved twice after what we're seeing on this picture, which is at the corner of the bed.
Is it was moved twice after officers
Okay.
initially entered the bedroom.
And-
Good answer.
And is it possible that the gun in the position that you can see my client, even though it's dark, that gun was to his right-hand side, laying in that pool of blood that had saturated that carpet prior to it being put up on the bed?
I don't know where the gun was prior to being put on the bed. It is generally to his right, as we're looking
Okay.
at where I know he was positioned in the room.
Okay. And you know that he had blood on his hands, correct?
He did have blood on his
Okay.
hands.
And in fact, I know you're not happy with the quality of this picture, but in other pictures that you've seen his hands with blood on the front side and blood on the back side, correct?
Yes, his hands, both hands were blood covered.
Okay. And that would be consistent with someone who's rendering aid before first responders come, isn't that right?
It's consistent with him having blood on his hands.
Okay.
He did, looking at the first officer entering the room, he did have his hands on her neck.
Okay. And that was something that he did until the officer said, "We're going to take over now," correct?
Well, when the first officer arrived, he was there with his hands on her neck, and then an officer directed him to move away, and then the officer took over trying to render aid.
Okay. So let's talk about cast off. Is that what you call it?
Cast off is a bloodstained term.
Okay. And you spoke about cast off and how it would be a linear pattern, or what you saw was a linear pattern. And so cast off is coming off of if you could just remind me again, what was your definition of cast off?
Well, the mechanism of cast off is when some object that has wet blood on it is in motion.
Okay.
And so as it moves, blood comes off in a column, in a ligament of blood will come off, break into individual droplets as it travels through air.
Okay.
And because it comes off of basically one point or one area, then when it lands on a surface, those individual droplets, as they form on the surface, will make a linear or curvilinear pattern.
Okay. And so if you have a surface that has a lot of blood, say hands, and you do this, can cast off occur?
Cast off can be any object that has wet blood on it.
I assume he
finger.
went like this.
Okay.
If it's
Or
a
like
hand, then usually we'll see like more than one linear distribution
Okay.
for, say, blood coming off, depending on which fingers they are, how many. Or it can be some other object that has blood on it that's in motion, and then
Sure.
blood comes off of that object.
And
Say
just
a
for the court reporter,
knife.
I'm just going to describe what you just did and what I did, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me. When I talked about cast off, I talked about moving my hands in a snapping fashion away from my body, or it could be downward. And when you were describing that, you were saying it could be a hand, any finger, or all fingers going off of that object, correct?
Just any object that has wet blood on it and the object is in motion so that blood comes off of the object could produce cast off.
Okay, thank you. Now, and I guess with cast off, what I think you've identified as droplets in a linear type pattern is the words you were saying to direct examination?
That individual stains in the pattern oriented to each other will be in a linear or curvilinear pattern.
Okay, in a linear pattern, I'm just assuming what, I guess, you're talking about straight or likely straight.
Well, I say it could be linear or curvilinear, so a part of the pattern could be very straight. You could have a part where the whole line curves a bit, so it's curvilinear, but you can still, looking at it, see how they're related to each other.
Okay, and unless you actually see whatever it is that's holding that blood, you can't be certain of that, correct?
You cannot generally look at a cast-off pattern by itself to determine what the object was, other than looking at the individual stains. This came off of it's a low volume or very small surface area versus something that has a large surface area.
Okay, now,
That was great. That was great. That was great. This is exactly, he's getting there. This is exactly what I was hoping for. You can't tell me what object or how that cast off happened. You can't tell me it was a knife. You can't tell me it was his hands. You can't tell me if it was the gun. I don't know exactly if that's what he's getting at. And he's also getting in other things through this witness that probably shouldn't be testified to, like the DNA and on the knife, on the gun, etc. But if he can get what he can, I mean, the prosecution's not objecting. If he can get these answers answered by her, that's great. Then he either A, he doesn't need to call an expert. B, he might not even have to put on a defense. We'll see. But there's a great line of questioning, and I'm loving the answers. Let's continue.
now when you're talking about the surface, and the surfaces that you're talking about in this case is you have the wall, correct?
I'm sorry, the surface area I was just referring to was the surface bearing the blood.
I understand, and I'm just moving on to surfaces that could create what you ultimately interpret. Like the wall, for example, that would be a clean surface if blood hit that, right?
Judge, objection to the mischaracterization of the answer. Her answer was about what type of object could create cast off.
Right, and he's moving on now.
Yeah,
This is
I'm
new.
moving
This
on.
is a new.
Understood, but
Okay.
to then use the word create, what she's talking about, I think.
Overruled.
So just so I'm clear, I don't
Sit
want to confuse. We're talking about surfaces. So like a surface like this, or a surface like this, or a surface of skin. Okay, so that would be like a tabletop, clothing, fabric, and skin.
So,
So I haven't asked the question yet.
okay,
Depending
She's gonna
on
help ya.
what surface you're talking about, you have would it be easier to identify whether it's a linear pattern or even whether it's a drop pattern. Excuse me if I'm not using the right term. When you're talking about like a wall or a flat surface like this versus clothing and say denim, like what we have in this case, or a forearm, what we have in this case, there'd be different.
Objection to the compound question.
Overruled, he hasn't asked the question yet.
I haven't asked the question yet, yeah. Would there be
Like
different
compound.
things that you would consider based upon the surface that you're analyzing in coming at your conclusions?
Well,
Surface.
in looking at bloodstains, all of them, you should consider the target surface, that is the surface receiving the blood, and how it might alter a blood stain. And again, it goes back to things like the volume of blood in the cast-off. Even something that might be absorbent like denim, if it's a very small volume, then it may not be enough blood to really be disrupted when it strikes that surface. It really depends on several factors.
Okay.
I think there was another portion to your question, but I've forgotten now.
Well, I think the actual question was in making your conclusions as to some of the things that you've said today, whether it's a circular stain, whether it's a elliptical stain, I think you talk about, or if it's a transfer stain. Would the surface have an effect on each of those different possible patterns? Or
Yes.
how you identify them?
Target surface is an important consideration with any bloodstain pattern. How will this particular surface affect the blood as it's transferring from a fluid to a drying stain on the surface? So surface is important. In terms of linear, we're looking for not just on a flat surface, but linear distributions can be identified on contoured surfaces, or a solid surface versus an absorbent. In the context of the scene, you may or may not be able to make that determination.
Now, you referenced.
Okay, I have a question. It's a weird question. It's a weird question. In the terms of the one linear pattern, which she was talking about on the left on the floor of the bloodstains that made those droplets that she had circled each one, and she said this is linear pattern. Is that linear pattern also caused by the fact that there's a body there? And does that body create that linear pattern? We'll go back just a smidge because he's in the middle of talking, but
Linear distributions can be identified on contoured surfaces, or a solid surface versus an absorbent. In the context of the scene, you may or may not be able to make that determination.
Now, you referenced a DLI report in your direct testimony. It was a private lab that the Commonwealth hired to do an examination. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I remember some of the reports were DLI.
Okay, well, there was only one, and the one was relating to the DNA that was being sought inside Joe's zipper in his button of his pants. Remember that?
I don't recall it being inside the zipper. It was identified to me that some sample in the area of the button or in that area was in fact sampled, and that they did find DNA profiles.
Okay, and did you read that report?
I think I did.
Okay.
okay. We have some Zoom room. Let's see how much we have. I feel like we need to speed this up, but if we do, we'll be on real time shortly. But let's speed it up a little bit and see how it goes. Okay, so I'm going to back it up just a smidge. I don't know why it's doing that.
Isn't it true that the his pants? Do you remember that?
I don't recall it being inside the zipper. It was identified to me that some sample in the area of the button or in that area was in fact sampled, and that they did find DNA profiles.
Okay, and did you read that report?
I think I did.
Okay, isn't it true that the request for the analysis was actually not blood stains? The request for the analysis was around the blood stains for contact or touch DNA. You remember that?
I don't recall anything in it that says specifically how it was sampled.
Okay, but what my question is you spoke about transfer stains to the Commonwealth when they asked the question. You spoke about inside the zipper where the button connects, all those sorts of things, and you spoke about blood transfer stains, didn't you?
I said on the backside of the buttonhole that I could see in the image transfer stains.
Okay.
I did not say what DNA was present in those transfer stains, just that there was a report in that area, and I think it was the button side as opposed to the buttonhole side.
But my question is, did you realize that the request for DNA was not for any blood stains? It was for touch DNA around that area that was described.
Judge, objection, facts not in evidence.
Did you realize that?
As I said, I wasn't a party to sampling. I don't know exactly how the sampling was done.
Okay. Well, I guess my question then is, how did it just automatically talk about transfers in that area when that wasn't part of any sort of scientific testing done by the Commonwealth of Virginia or their hired DNA person?
Judge, I'm sorry, I have to object. He is mischaracterizing what is in the certificate of laboratory analysis. Facts not in evidence.
I testified that I saw stains, particularly on the backside of the buttonhole,
Okay.
and looking at those stains, identified that as transfer stains.
And despite the fact that the DNA lab didn't deal with stains at all, was that something that you dealt with the Commonwealth in preparation? Is that why you talked about stains?
I identified the stains because I looked at the picture and I saw the stains and I said what I saw. That is a separate issue from any testing that may have been done for DNA in that area.
Now, we looked at the hip stain that you identified previously, and you were.
Okay, I don't know about you, but isn't this much nicer when it gets sped up? Isn't he much more direct and more put together when it's fast forward? I don't know how much we're going to sustain this, but we'll see. All right, but he's making some good points. They did talk about whose DNA was that, and he's reiterating back that that was just touch DNA. It wasn't. I mean, it's still Joe and Christine's DNA, but needless to say. Okay, now we are talking about the stain on Joe's hip.
Now, we looked at the hip stain that you identified previously, and you were testifying. It was on his Joe Ryan's hip. You testified that there were like fingers that were going down because you could conclude that the flow was going down toward the ground where the picture was, correct?
No, I said there was a blood stain on his left hip, and there was a satellite, what appeared to be satellite with a little bit of flow from that, and that direction of those flows was towards the floor, or in terms of the body relative to his body was front to back. I did not say that that was a contact, and certainly did not say it was from fingers.
Now, did you review any evidence that informed you as to what Joe Ryan's movement was before blood was on him?
There's no way looking objectively at the evidence for me to determine what he was doing before there was any bloodshed.
Okay, if the evidence was that after he was shot, he started getting up again, so we would have blood, and he was starting to get up from his position on the floor, would that be something that you would want to consider in making some sort of a conclusion for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Any statement about what he may or may not have done would not have any bearing on looking at the bloodstains and looking at what I could determine, any actions I could determine based on those bloodstain patterns.
So when you're receiving this case, you're not talking about what the homicide detectives in this case would have already found at the time that you started working with them.
I don't know what the homicide investigators themselves found or thought they had found. I was presented the documentation and I analyzed that documentation.
Okay.
And I don't recall ever having a discussion with any of the homicide investigators about what they thought they had found.
Sorry, bear with me.
It was a great question. I'm going to pause it right there. That was a great question. So, knowing that Joe had made movements afterwards, would that change her determination? She's like, no, because, and I see where she's going. In whatever position he's in, that blood is there. And especially since he's on his hip and the blood is going down, I don't know. I see some things both ways. But we're talking about the hip. So he's making some good points, but I really
It
want
says
him
here
to
that you
really
were,
get into it.
provided the chief medical examiner's reports, correct?
Yes,
You were provided a DNA map from Detective Terry Leach, correct?
yes.
You were provided a blood location map from Terry Leach, correct?
A blood location map, I don't recall that.
Okay, well, if it was in your report that you wrote and it says that you received that, would you feel like that was reliable?
It's his opinion. It doesn't have a bearing on what I do. I look at the documentation separately from any of opinions that he may have formed.
Okay, and so it looks as though you were provided, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You were provided 10 certificates of analysis from the Department of Forensic Science, including the DLI case of June 1st, 2023. I'm sorry, you were provided 15 certificates of analysis, including DLI, who was a private lab, and Bodie, who was a private lab. You received those, correct?
Yes, I would have to refer to my report, but I listed everything I received.
Okay.
That doesn't mean everything I listed had a bearing on my analysis, simply that I had received it.
Okay, and I'm actually reading from that portion of your report, so I'm not trying to trick you and do anything like that. It says you have images of Juliana Perez Magalhaes, 31 images.
Okay.
You have images of Brendan Banfield, 180 images. Does that sound right?
There were a number of images. I don't recall the exact number. I have to refer to my report.
I'll go through them quickly because I know you can't just in the moment. 137 images of Christine Banfield, 177 images of Joe Ryan. You have 1,326 scene images. You have evidence examination images, 1951. Evidence images, 308. X-rays of Christine Banfield and Joe Ryan, correct? You
No,
have,
if you're reading the list, then yes, that would be correct.
okay. You have 40 Axon body cams from the police department, 37 fleet cams, Axon interview cams. Now, that's what I'm asking about, the Axon interview cams. Those would be interviews relating to this investigation and the evidence that was being compiled as they went on, right?
There were some interview cams of interviews that, when they were done by some detective to some interviewee, and yes, I looked at those.
Okay, and those interview cams, if they contain the factual predicate that I said to you sometime earlier, that Joe Ryan had gotten up from his position on the floor before he was shot by Juliana Perez Magalhaes, would that change your position with regard to what you've described on the hip, if he was in an upright position versus laying down as he was in the picture?
No, the blood stain is what it is. I simply described what it is and what that tells me about this small portion of the scene. Any statements that anyone makes, I do not take as being factual.
Okay.
That's
And so-
subjective as opposed to objective evidence.
Thank you. And so going along with what you said, the pictures of Joe Ryan laying on the bed and you, the dog bed, where the saturation stain was, you recall it?
There was a saturation on the dog bed, especially to his left and onto the carpet.
Okay. And so you ended up drawing flow patterns that were going down his neck, right?
I looked at those and I showed where those were to focus the attention on them.
Okay, and that was for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, right?
Yes,
Okay, and so let's just go through some of those flow patterns. So when the flow patterns are coming straight down off his
Yes,
chin,
yes.
down his neck, that would suggest to you that he was upright?
not necessarily. He could be laying on his back and have flow,
Okay.
depending on the position of his head, if it's to the right, to the left, or straight up.
And we're talking about a head wound to the right-hand side, right?
Yes,
Okay, and we're talking about flow patterns that would go down, and then there were some that went down and down the jawline, correct?
there was
You
some,
remember?
there were some that were kind of downward from the left side, then there was some from the left traveling over towards the right, and there were some from the right that went what looked to be pretty much straight up and down if you took the body and oriented in an anatomic position.
Okay, and so those flow patterns that you drew for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury were to show different possibilities or different, different positions, I guess, that blood would have been coming down his face?
We're simply showing what's there. This is what the flows were, and the fact that they're in different directions indicated that there was movement.
Okay, so anything on the right-hand side would the shot through his temple and the blood and everything that came from that, would that cover what happens on the right-hand side?
If his head was upright at the time, then blood could flow from the wound down, pretty much straight down. That's one possibility.
And I know you reviewed the medical examiner's report. Did you see the portion where she opined that there was aspiration of blood? There'd been blood going down into his throat?
I would expect that there would be, and looking at the blood stains on his face, there are some stains, especially just around the lips, that look like they could be aspirated, and I'm sorry, expirated.
Expirated.
That means that anytime that there's fluid, blood, and air is forced through that, such as blood in the throat, and he's trying to exhale, then that produces little bubbles, if you will, coming up, and then they fall back. And if he's on his back, they'd fall back in the same position, and you see these little kind of sort of pockmarked looks in the blood, and that's one way of looking at expirated blood.
But that could be another another source of blood for what you drew down his neck, correct?
Well,
Is it possible?
I wouldn't expect for expirated blood, as in just exhaling through blood, to have enough volume that you would have flow from that.
So you're saying that that's not possible?
I said I would not expect there to be enough volume in an expirated
Okay.
blood stain that you would actually have
Okay,
in a situation where if you're talking about someone who's basically not active at that point.
okay, well, and okay. So are you saying it's not possible that any of those lines that went down his neck would not have been from aspiration blood? Are you saying it's not possible?
I would say that I would not expect expirated blood to have the flow, to present that kind of flow, especially where we look at where it's coming from the side. And I really wouldn't expect that much volume if he's laying on his back and expirating through the blood, that you have enough volume to flow down his chin.
And if he was not laying on his back, would that change your expectation is the way you want to answer it?
If he's, say, upright, then I would expect expirated blood to be going away from his face as opposed to coming back to his face.
Okay.
So I really would not expect that.
So when I ask the question, is it possible? You answer, I wouldn't expect to see it. But can you answer my question? Is it possible that expirated blood came out of his mouth down on any of those, depending on how the head was facing?
I think if blood is coming from his mouth, in a situation where you could have expirated blood, then there could be a volume of blood in the mouth, and that volume of blood could overflow and produce flow, say, down his chin.
Okay, so it's possible.
It's possible for blood
that's
to
what I
come from the
wanted to get
mouth.
to.
It's
Thank
not
you.
expirated, but it is possible for it to come from the mouth.
Just say it's possible. Anything's possible, right?
Your Honor, I'm going to X out of this.
All right.
Making good points. But yet, we still aren't the crux of it. How did the blood get on Joe's hands that are falling down? How did the transfer
Are you able to
blood
see
get
the
on
picture your screen?
Joe's hands?
Screensaver.
Okay, sorry. Let me see if I can change that.
She's a great witness. I really like her. She's very knowledgeable. She's helpful to both sides. Listen, the evidence is what it
Ma'am,
is.
can you see
She
those two
can't
pictures side
speculate
by
what
side?
happened.
Yes,
Okay, do you recognize those pictures?
yes,
Okay, in the picture on the right, we've taken a look at in a different form, the Commonwealth's version. And in those droplets, you've described them as droplets of blood in a linear-like pattern,
in a linear distribution.
linear distribution, thank you. And then, do you recognize the other picture?
Yes,
And that's also a portion of a picture that you've already looked at.
yes,
Now, the one, I guess, droplet in the left picture, you've described as airborne, correct?
yes.
But the droplets that you have on the right side, and Your Honor, I would identify this as Defense Exhibit 83.
83, you're not going alphabet anymore?
This is a different,
Okay, 83. Okay.
I think, because we were at 82.
No, no, we were at 80, A, B, C, D, and E.
Oh, I'm sorry, then this would be 81.
This is 81. Okay. No, 80. All right.
Ma'am, the picture on the right side, you say that these are droplets in a linear, and you just said it,
Distribution.
distribution, thank you. But the droplet that in the left one is airborne distribution, correct?
Well, I'm sorry, the one on the left is not a distribution, it is a stain.
Okay, so it's an airborne stain.
All of
Correct.
those you're talking about are airborne, whether they're droplets on the, as we look at on the picture on the right, or the picture on the left, airborne in that the droplet traveled through air, even if that travel is downward.
So they're all airborne droplets.
Those are, yes.
Okay, and so there's no distinction between the droplet portions on either picture in your mind.
Well, in terms of defining whether or not they're airborne, they're all airborne. That is, the droplets travel through air, even if that travel was straight down.
Now, the other part of the picture on the right was, I think you had testified, actually, strike that. I'll just leave that as that.
Yeah, if you're ahead, stop.
Court's indulgence for one moment.
Yes, sir.
Keep going. You're doing great. You're doing really good, especially at 1.5 speed. Let's see. We'll see if we can zoom just a second here.
Sure.
I know you got more points to make. Come on.
Take that picture down. No further questions.
All right. redirect.
Oh, no. No. No, 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 no. Remember earlier I had that question. What? No, no, no. You don't want to leave the jury with questions? Ah. All right. Well, you were doing so good, and then now you went poo-poo-pee. Good luck, Brennan. Good luck, Brennan. Okay, so redirect. I'm sure she's got some really good questions.
Which one?
How did the blood get on Joe Ryan's hands? You consider that transfer
Subject to hearing
DNA?
Display. What was
Great.
previously admitted as Commonwealth's 222, I believe, under seal.
222 is not under seal.
Judge, it probably, okay, that's fine.
It was in or not under seal, 222.
That's fine. Ms. Telegraph, hi. So let's kind of go in reverse here. Where he left off was with what you see on your screen. Let me make it big so we're looking at just that. Mr. Carroll was drawing your attention to this droplet here. Is that correct?
Yes,
And was comparing it to then the droplets that we see on Mr. Ryan's arm. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay, and I think perhaps there was just a little bit of confusion talking about blood in flight, blood in the air. When we looked at 222, the picture and the portion of the picture that you were drawing our attention to, referencing flow, gravity, and the position of the body, is this lower stain on his hip. Is that correct?
It's the one that shows any type of a flow associated with it is the one that's on the lateral side or the side of the outside side of his left hip. And it's that particular stain clearly is larger than the stains that we were just talking about airborne could be falling,
Okay.
from above. So
Do you believe that the stain that we see to the left on Mr. Ryan's hip is part of the pattern that leads us then to the droplet of blood that we see on the right?
I don't see that as forming a pattern.
Okay. Do you believe that they happened at the same time?
Well, a pattern, if I could define my
Please.
term, a pattern is a group of stains that are related to each other that happen from a single mechanism, a single incident. These are different mechanisms to produce this, and therefore it's not the same. Whether or not they're simultaneous in time is a different issue.
Okay. So then let's talk about the mechanism. Were these droplets produced by the same mechanism?
But depends on which droplets that you're talking
Sorry,
about.
let me be clear. The droplets that we see to the right of our screen on his abdomen, were they produced by the same mechanism as the area of blood stain that we see on his hip with the flow lines coming from it down towards the floor?
They don't appear to be the same mechanism.
Okay, thank you. So back at the beginning, Mr. Carroll asked you about your report, and we started with the knife. Let me ask you, do you recall when did you produce your report to Fairfax County Police?
I don't remember the date of the report. It's been some time ago.
Do you have a copy of your report with you?
No, I do not.
Okay, do you have any documents with you that would refresh your recollection?
No, I do not.
Did you leave it back here?
I do have a digital copy back there.
If you refreshed your recollection with the digital copy, would that enable you to answer the question about when the report was produced?
Yes?
Your Honor, if I may retrieve her digital copy.
See, I asked this earlier. Why doesn't the defense show them the evidence and then discredit them? Could have done that with Juliana 10 times over. Bowled her over with the evidence.
All right, when did you produce your report for the Fairfax County Police Department?
Report date August 21, 2024.
All right, thank you. And you did not examine the knife. You said it was not part of your analysis. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, why not?
Because in the body cam video, there were multiple places that showed where the knife was altered, if you will, by officers in the scene. That is, officers coming in, walking in the area where the knife was. You see the knife in one orientation, then another orientation. It gets flipped over, it gets pressed down. So based on that, anything that's on the knife could have been transferred from the floor to the knife. There's also bedding.
It's contaminated.
That's on the floor, part of which has saturations to it. So that could have transferred from that to the knife. So there were so many alterations that could be seen in the body cam that would confuse anything that we get from the knife. So we don't know if, say, the bloodstains on the knife were there before officers arrived, or if it happened as a consequence of the knife being moved as the officers are coming in and with their footwear, hitting it, pushing it, stepping on it, and so forth.
All right. At the same time, Mr. Carroll asked you about swabbing the gun, and you indicated that you did not observe any samples taken from the gun. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was not a party to the sampling itself.
All right. But you did receive DNA results from testing performed on the sheet underneath where the gun was resting when police entered the room. Is that correct?
If I may refer.
Yes, it's fine.
Well, sorry, it doesn't list it as far as, the items are not listed with the name of the report, and I don't think I included in my report anything about that particular stain. I didn't see the stain. I didn't see it in the body cam and the still images in the scene, and I don't recall getting pictures of the sheet itself where someone else looked at that. So that wouldn't be, I'm not going to analyze something I didn't actually look at.
Sure, understood. But you did receive the certificate of laboratory analysis indicating that that sheet was tested.
I remember being aware that there was testing based on a pattern that someone else saw in the evidence examination outside the scene.
Okay, and that certificate of analysis was reflective of the results of testing the sheet from the gun's first position on body worn camera. Is that correct?
Well, again, I only know that from things I've heard said. I didn't see the pattern on the sheet,
Sure.
so I didn't make an analysis of pattern because I didn't have it to look at. If someone else did that, and which I was told that they did, and that they had submitted something for analysis, okay.
All right. Mr. Carroll asked you though about, would you have preferred to have the gun tested? You indicated sure, all things being equal. But is there any reason why a test result on the gun would have been unreliable?
Well, again, I can't evaluate something I didn't look at. So one possibility is that looking at the condition of the gun as it's laying on the sheet, it is covered
Contaminated.
on the one side. If then it's had the same stain pattern on the opposite side, then it certainly could have transferred blood from the side of the gun to the sheet, and then it would be reliable to say it come from that. But not having looked at that pattern myself, I really can't say. There could be other
Plus people moved the
transfers,
gun.
assuming it was a transfer, and I don't know because I didn't see that pattern.
Sure. I guess what I'm asking is you testified that you observed the gun being moved from that location. Is that correct?
I observed it being moved twice by officers in the scene.
So if testing had occurred after those movements, is there any reason to think it might not have been reliable?
I have nothing to base an opinion on.
All right. So you also were asked if it was possible that the blood on the gun had come from the stain on the floor. And you answered that yes, that was a possibility, correct?
Looking at the side of the gun as it's laying on the mattress, it's consistent with a transfer front to back on the gun, fully that side of the gun. And one possibility for that is that it was in fact on a saturation stain, or it possibly could have been in the blood pool or some other transfer, because it appears to be a transfer pattern on the full side of the gun.
Is it possible that that transfer pattern was created by a bloody hand?
I didn't see anything that in the pattern that would tell me it was a bloody hand, unless it's a hand in motion, and it really I didn't see striations that I could identify motion. So I don't know if just bloody hand contacting the gun would be right or not. If it's a transfer just from holding a gun in normal position, I wouldn't expect it to have all along the full length front to back. As long as you're holding it in the normal position, I would expect a bloody hand to transfer blood around the grips and possibly a portion of the slide, especially directly above, or I'm sorry, below the trigger or just above the trigger guard. That's normally what we see in bloody hands handling a gun. In this case, it looks like transfer full front to back length. That looks a little bit more like a broader surface, like on a saturation stain or in a blood pool. But other than that, I don't have enough information to make any further determination.
Okay, thank you. If we go back for a moment, Mr. Carroll asked you about the injury on Mr. Ryan's thumb and whether or not it was consistent with injuries sustained by someone who's using a knife. You explained what did the injuries look like from slippage on a knife?
Typically, if you're looking at a knife slipping, a person wielding a knife, especially repeated blows, without a hilt on the knife, then their hand may slip down, usually down the blade, and they could get
Right,
a
and
cutting
get cut.
injury themselves. That's not an uncommon thing in multiple stabbing situations.
In your review of Mr. Ryan's autopsy, did you see any such wounds?
No.
He did not have any cuts. He had a bruise, but he didn't have a cut. That's what I said.
Ms. Carroll asked you about testing the blood saturation stains on the carpet in front of the dresser and the stain closest to the foot of the bed. You indicated that there was no reason to test the stain in front of the drawers because we know the source. Can you elaborate? Who was the source?
Well, I would say the source would be Christine Banfield, because when officers come in, where you see that saturation in front of the chest of drawers is where her upper body was. And we could see that Mr. Banfield had his hands on her neck when the officers first came. They immediately have him move and take over, trying to assist, and therefore knowing from the autopsy what type of wound that is and everything, then that it would be predictable that a saturation would be in that area. So when you see that, finding any other DNA profile in there would be difficult to explain in terms of the scene. Traces of someone else might be there, but the blood itself, we can see the source.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll asked you, after demonstrating with his hands a particular movement, whether or not cast off, like that found on the walls, like that found on Mr. Banfield's pants, could have been created by the handshaking motion that he demonstrated. You indicated, what, was that a possibility?
Okay, one, I did not identify a cast off on the wall. There were some elliptical stains, just separate from anything else. I can't really categorize that other than there's some elliptical stains. Cast off can be from any blood-bearing surface that's in motion, such that blood comes off of it, whether it's a single point, a point of a finger, the point of a knife, any other object that has wet blood on it that's in motion, that blood comes off. If it's flicking of the hands, and if they have bloody fingers, then I would expect to see probably multiple lines that would show that it came off of something of a continuous space. So lines from each one that's more than one point. But it's any object in motion. So even identifying cast off doesn't tell you what created the cast off. Sometimes in a scene context, it could be narrowed down to one object, but many times you have to say, okay, it could be this or it could be that. There could be multiple items.
Judge, if we can pull down the photo for just a moment. And if we can look at Commonwealth's previously admitted 185. And if I can have that displayed, please.
I don't have a 185.
I'm sorry?
I don't have a 185.
Okay.
I,
If I can have the court's indulgence for just a moment.
all right.
Right, there's 186 and 187.
186?
I have a 186, yes.
All right, thank you.
Blood on the jeans.
Ms. Telegraph, is this cast-off pattern consistent with someone's hands shaking away from their body?
Well, it's consistent with, well, for one, it's not just one pattern. There are multiple lines there, and some object, blood-bearing object, in motion so that blood comes off.
All
That's,
right. Could that object have been a knife?
I can't exclude a knife if there's a blood-bearing surface of the knife and the knife is in motion. That's one possibility.
She can't tell where it came from.
Mr. Carroll asked you if there had been evidence that after Mr. Ryan was shot, he had started to get up. Would that have had bearing on your analysis? And do you recall your answer?
Yes, I said I only look at the objective evidence. So if I had seen that evidence, it would be described in my report. So it's not based on any statement that anybody made.
All right, and so that objective evidence was not provided to you, is that correct?
Well, the bloodstains are what they are. And if I don't see a bloodstain that specifically shows me that he was upright, then I can't say that he was upright.
Based on your review of all of the evidence, could Mr. Ryan have gotten up after he was shot?
Objection, Your Honor. I mean, this is
Do you
going
want to
to.
approach?
Yeah, you can't, she can't answer that. Good question, though, but
Let me
she
ask the
can't
question.
answer.
Time.
Just so you recall. Could Mr. Ryan have gotten up after he was shot?
Which time?
Either.
It's
Right, he
entirely
was not
possible that
toy.
he would be mobile after the first shot because that shot went behind his eyes and did not incapacitating. That is, it did not approach the brainstem, it did not take out the
We know
midbrain, it
that
did
he,
not destroy the
we know
cerebellum.
that he could.
It did not
and
sever
we
the
know that he
spinal cord,
did.
it did not shock the spinal cord, it's simply behind the eyes. So there is certainly an open possibility that he could move after that shot.
How about the second shot?
Well, after the shot to the chest, the evidence indicates that they recovered a bullet from the spine and that the spinal cord had a concussion at that point, and that wound path included perforations to the heart, to the pericardium, and so forth. But especially that it would have hit the spine, that he would not be able to get up from that.
So could Mr. Ryan, after receiving the shot to his chest, and Judge, I'd like to share Commonwealth's 241, previously admitted under seal, could he have put his hands in that position?
I don't know if she can
This is
answer that.
It's not exactly a yes or no question,
All right.
because could a person fall back with their hands on their chest? That's a possibility. Could they do that and have all the other blood stains where they are? That doesn't work together.
That does not work together?
Well, he has to some way have all this blood on his face and be in a different position so that you get blood on the left side of his face, not just the right side. And now he's laying here.
Ooh,
So the answer is I don't see how with both of those together. I mean, there's a sequencing issue then, especially if we determine that the headshot was in fact the first and then the chest shot. So
Can you explain? I'm sorry, you said there's a sequencing issue. What is that sequencing issue?
Your Honor, I'm going to object.
Or else sustain.
yeah, yeah.
To understand your testimony, if he had fallen like that, his hands could be in that position. Is that correct?
his hands by themselves could possibly, I can't say that I've ever seen one fall quite like this, but could possibly, if he already had his hands kind of in front of him, it could fall back and they just fall into that position.
But knowing his injuries following the second gunshot wound, could he have intentionally placed his hands in that position?
Once again, Judge, I'm going to object.
I'll sustain the objection.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine. I think we've gotten there. Thank you. No further questions.
All right, is this witness subject to recall?
Judge, just for the moment.
All right, so since you're subject to recall, you cannot discuss your testimony with anybody, and you're still subject to the rule on witnesses, okay? All right, you can have a seat.
Okay, so she did an amazing job. I think she was great for both sides. You know, the blood is what it is. The evidence is what it is. She only could just testify how the blood got there based upon the patterns that she sees. In reference to all of this ballistics and maybe she could testify to that because she does have some ballistics training and what have you. But remember in the beginning when the defense was like, we want to voir dire her, she's getting into XYZ and things that, you know, she wasn't asked to do. She wasn't asked to analyze his body position after he'd been shot. That's not what she was asked to do. That's not what her expertise is in this case. So she cannot testify to that because that's it's not in her report. It has to be in the report. And she has, you know, you have to be able to testify to that. So excellent. So let's see where we're at. The Commonwealth said they had one more witness and then they might rest their case. So let's see.
Let's go ahead and take our afternoon break for 15 minutes. We'll come back at 3:30. Again, do not discuss case with anybody and don't do any outside research, okay?
All right. So they're going to take their afternoon break. Let's see if we're going to zoom or if we're going to be right on the schedule.
Very long.
Take a
Judge,
recess.
I would imagine less.
You have one more witness.
Oh.
And you have one more witness, is
I do.
that correct? Do you know how long that witness is going to be approximately?
Not very long at all, Judge. I would imagine less than an hour, probably 10 minutes of
Okay,
direction.
so
and
we'll probably
20
finish the day.
minutes
All right, okay, let's go ahead and we'll take a recess until 3:30.
All right. Let's see. We might not have much Zoom room. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this stream right here and we'll pick it back up. So just as an analysis at the end of this stream, the lovely forensic blood spatter analysis came in, and some of the points that the defense made were did she rely on the evidence tapes? She did. She couldn't necessarily state whether or not that the lines on the face of Joe Ryan from the blood stain. She said they kind of went here and there, and they were also down. She couldn't ascertain where those came from. She knows that maybe the one from the side came down from that one. He asked if whether or not it came from the mouth, and she wouldn't give it to him. And then finally she did. She gave it to him and said that that could have come from there, because how else did it get there, right? She can't say for sure where these stains came from, and unless she actually saw it. Like she said, she knew where the stains came from Christine Banfield, because in the beginning of the body cam footage, she sees Christine lying there bleeding. We talked about DNA testing. That was a hit or a miss. You can't test the gun because it was contaminated. The knife was contaminated as well. People were stepping on it. People were moving things. Can you determine? Okay, I can't read my own writing. She talked about the volume of the blood on the denim pants. And we know that like cloth and stuff will absorb that versus like a flat surface, a wall or what have you. Again, I'm not really sure. Like there wasn't any sort of like big points. She still didn't change her opinion about the hip and how the blood got on there. You know, the blood stain was there. It's a big stain and it was dripping down. He asked if that could happen while he was up, and she's like, blood doesn't flow that way. It has to be, you have to be in the fixed position for it to happen. And then the prosecution came back and said Joe Ryan did not have any injuries to his hand from the knife. So some good points made for both. I kind of see both ways. I see this scales both ways. Still not 100% indicative that how that got there. They still haven't answered that question, but she kind of put in a little bit of a doubt. Anyways, we're going to end there. I will upload this and then we will head back for the end of day 4. Will the prosecution rest their case today? And will tomorrow be a new day of the defense and their case in chief? Stay tuned. Thanks for watching Legalese 123. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe for more content.